Commissioner Crenshaw, I'd like to start with you, please. You were a vocal supporter of including Scope 3 emissions in the SEC's climate disclosure rule. I'd just like you to briefly explain for us your views on these requirements.
Thank you, Senator. Again, I think that investors were asking for information, and I think one of the things investors were asking for was a variety of information, and there was a lot of support for Scope 3. At the end of the day, as you know, we did not include it. One of the things that I really think we should have thought about more completely were using models and estimates and assumptions, ways that issuers could provide investors with the information that they were looking for without having to go to the farmers, without having to go upstream or downstream. And I also think we could have really considered a robust safe harbor from liability. That way it would have reduced costs for issuers and provided information to investors.
I'm glad to hear you talk about cost right now, but it seemed that when you were responding to Senator Kennedy, you didn't have a good idea about what the costs are, but the cost would be significant, the complexity obviously very, very considerable. When it comes to nominations, our job is to endorse or reject the policy positions that you've taken, because we've got to look at your past history as we think about the future. I really find it troubling that you leveraged your office at the SEC to advance these extreme climate positions. I think you've gone way beyond the remit of the SEC, and it's deeply concerning. Not only did you support this climate disclosure rule, but you have argued that it didn't go far enough. And these requirements would crush businesses from manufacturing to energy to agriculture. I've talked to farmers in my state. They talk about, and farmers across the nation, frankly, have talked about how much of a burden this would have imposed on them, disclosing personal information, business information, or go out of business. You talked about wanting to impose cost on scammers. Well, I can tell you, you would impose cost on farmers to the extent you could even put them out of business, and the type of legal liability and exposure that this might be a predicate for. I don't know where you're trying to go with this. This absolutely has no place in my view. This is a very misguided proposal you've supported. Commissioner Goldsmith-Romero, I'd like to come to you. It was reported that in 2016, when you were the Inspector General for TARP and investigating corruption allegations related to Mayor Mike Duggan's Detroit demolition program, that you told state investigators to, quote, go dark and halt that investigation, noting to your staff Mayor Duggan's Obama White House ties and his potential Clinton administration role. Is that true? Did you tell mission investigators in 2016 to slow down their investigation?
Absolutely not. That's completely made up.
Can I just get this on the record then? Did you tell your staff in 2016 that Mayor Duggan was close with the Obama White House and a potential Hillary Clinton cabinet member or other senior post in the Clinton administration?
No, Senator.
I'm glad to have that on the record. Thank you. Come back to you, Commissioner Crenshaw. You dissented from the SEC's approval of Grayscale's spot Bitcoin ETF application, despite the fact that a federal court had struck down the SEC's prior disapproval. Do you continue to disagree with the SEC's approval of Bitcoin ETFs?
Senator, to approve an ETP, you have to make a public interest finding on each individual one. To the degree that the commission votes, and we have only voted on that one, Senator, and to make that public interest finding, you look at the facts in front of you, and given the significant fraud in the underlying spot markets globally, given the opacity.
Well, the court looked at the facts, and they struck it down. I've just been deeply disturbed by the posture that the commission and specifically yourself have taken with hostility toward the crypto industry. This is a critical industry in terms of innovation and technology in our country, and I hate to see it being pushed overseas. Commissioner Goldsmith-Romero, I'm going to come back to you now. The current FDIC chairman grossly mishandled the auctions of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, two of the largest bank failures in U.S. history. Where do you think the biggest risks are right now within the banking system?
Thank you for that question, Senator. I think we need to look at, we still have this commercial real estate risk that is happening, particularly related to offices and after the pandemic, and also multifamily homes. So I think that's a major risk we have to look at. I think we also just need to continue to think about interest rate risk and how banks should manage that. So those are some of the areas.
Real quickly, FDIC leadership heavily cited the requirements of the least cost test as an excuse for the fact that these auctions failed. What role did the least cost test play in the failed auctions in your view?
Yeah, so I'm just looking at it from the outside, Senator, just like you are. And so I don't know.
Actually, I'm not looking at it from the outside. I saw what happened. And the least cost rule is an excuse because it was misapplied. It's got to be fixed. The person that's going to come in and lead this agency can't learn on the job. You need to know how it needs to be addressed, because what we did here, what the commission did, was expose the system to massive risk. It just should have never happened this way. How would you fix it?
Yeah, so I understand the least cost test. What I was saying from the outside is I can't see sort of specifically how it was applied and how they came up with those numbers. That's something that's been raised by a number of senators and would be one of the top things I would go in to try to dig behind and try to figure out what is going on.
I hope that before you're confirmed, you will work with us to come up with an approach to this, because again, you could get the call on day one when you walk in the office that there's another bank failure. We can't let this situation repeat itself. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Warren.